Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of The Push with Nick and KP. We are back once again to do a weekly recap of this week's episode of SmackDown, which took place on October 24th in Tempe, Arizona at the Mullet Arena. We kick things off with, of course, a recap of last week's SmackDown, but then we see the American Nightmare, Cody Rhodes, backstage arriving, and he gets an interaction with Big Jim. Jimmy thanks him for helping Jacob last week, sticking up for him, and Cody asks how things are with his brother and tells him that he needs to do what's best for him because it's clear that's what Jay will be doing. So kind of the opposite of what we've seen. We've seen Jay being told that by Roman. So interesting little bit there, I thought. We then see Cody Rhodes come out to address the people after asking the people what they want to talk about. He then says what he did last week was a bit out of pocket for him to hit Drew with that title. We noted that as well on our recap. And Cody is then quickly cut off by Drew. Drew goes on to complain about how even after the cheap shot last week, everyone still cheers for corporate Cody, unless we're talking about KP. KP does not cheer on corporate Cody. Then brings up Fatu, and he asks who it could be. Drew says perhaps it was Jimmy Uso, the black sheep of the family, and then say his name, and he appears. Jimmy comes out from the crowd to attack Drew after Cody had enough of listening to Drew talk. Um, so, who else could it have been? We then see the Solo Sokoa led MFT make their way out to the ring, which I thought was interesting timing as well. Definitely planting some seeds there, perhaps. But yeah, this all kind of leads up to the first match of the night, which has Ray Phoenix and Shinsuke Nakamura tagging up. But I like the idea of that tag team if they can make it work. Going up against Tama Tonga and JC Mateo of the MFTs. But before this match starts, we also see a bit of Drew backstage with Nick Aldis pleading to him to do something about this Jacob Fatu situation because he knows that if it was him, he wouldn't have been put in that match with Cody at Saturday Night Main Event. So, yeah, they're definitely going to hit that one hard, I'm assuming, until I figure it out. Hopefully, this is not like a Naomi situation where we have to wait what felt like 6 months. I don't recall the exact timeline, but it was a long time. Getting into the actual first match of the night, I thought this was a decent back and forth, although it did feel like Shinsuke and Ray Phoenix didn't really gel that well together, or at least kind of the expectations that I personally would hold. But maybe it felt like that was a bit more by design to kind of show how dangerous a team like MFT, who obviously should be gelling better together at this point. So maybe that's kind of what they were doing. So curious to get your thoughts on that match, KP, if you kind of saw the same thing there. But speaking of the MFT and the numbers game, that is how this one ends up, as it tends to do. Solo distracts Ray, and then he eats a chokeslam for his troubles. Tama then comes up and cleans up the mess to get the win, as Shinsuke is held out of the ring by JC Mateo. So, yeah, decent enough. Like I said, didn't love the dynamic between Shinsuke and Ray, but maybe that was by design. And maybe they won't tag together again, so we'll never know. So, have to wait and see. We then get the match between Kiana James and Tiffany Stratton. Kiana James, of course, accompanied by Julia. And this is a quality contest. It is not the longest match, but both women with that gymnastics background, as kind of mentioned by commentary. And this one kind of felt like showed off that pretty well. We haven't seen a ton, hardly any actually, of main roster work from Kiana, and I felt like this did a good job of kind of showcasing what she's able to do and potentially a worthy competitor. Tiffany does end up getting the win here, of course, but it wasn't as easy as you probably would have thought had you not seen any of Kiana outside of the main roster. After the match, Julia attacks Tiffany, which is kind of where I thought this was headed. Mentioned that on last week's recap as well. Interesting that we're kind of blending the U.S. and main title scene here. I guess beggars can't be choosers. At least they're both being showcased. But then after the match, a returning Jade Cargill comes up to help her fend off Julia, raises Stratton's hand with that title. That's all very short lived, however, though, as she does end up attacking, Jade does end up attacking Stratton, seemingly to make a statement, and that wound on her eyebrow, man, that is gnarly. But it looks pretty cool, not gonna lie. Scars are kind of cool sometimes. But officials come down to help separate, and yeah, we're able to successfully pull off Cargill, But Cargill does head to the ring and pick up that title to kind of see how it feels, I guess. Uh, a heel turn here for Jade Cargill, and I think it's very refreshing. It matches her character and just kind of stature of her character much better, in my opinion. But KP, tons of stuff going on. This is probably the first time in a long time from a SmackDown episode that I actually had trouble putting together slides because there was so much going on. So curious to get your thoughts on the first half of SmackDown. Obviously, that promo between Jimmy, Cody, and Drew, and the tag match between Shinsuke Ray and the MFTs, and then Kiana and Tiffany Stratton with that returning Jade Cargill.
Yeah, I mean, I think you make a good point. It is one of those SmackDowns, that just generally had a lot going on. There was a lot of content already from, from the first half, which is quite nice to see because, we do complain about that quite often and we want to see more, we want to see this, we want to see that. So this is quite nice. In terms of what we did see though, speaking about the very first instance of the night with Cody, Drew, and Jimmy, it just sort of brought to life to me a bit more of my general opinions on Cody. And I know obviously I'm probably in the minority not liking him, but I always find that when he does have his promos and stuff, the other guy tends to shine a lot more than he does on the mic. And I felt like Drew McIntyre just generally showed that again in this episode of SmackDown. I feel like he just adds a lot more to it. Cody has his classic things that he says, like, what do you want to talk about? And, when somebody's obviously being very delusional and talks this, that, and the other, he just shouts enough and then, gets very passionate about, corporate stuff. So, I don't know. It just basically is the same situation all the time with Cody Rhodes. I feel like Drew McIntyre adds a little bit more depth to it, which we've seen over the likes of like the feuds with like Kevin Owens and people like that as well, where just generally speaking, Cody does get outshone on the mic. And I feel like this happened again in this opening segment of SmackDown. Don't know if it was deliberately done or if it's just basically at a point now where they're out of material for Cody, but that's just the general vibe I got from it. And then when they popped in Jimmy Uso into the scene, that was a natural way of just sort of like taking that sort of, I don't know, lack of a better word, spotlight away from Cody Rhodes. You don't want the spotlight in that situation, but it kind of was drawing me to that. But yeah, it allowed me to sort of like focus on the Jimmy situation, then obviously building that match up for later on in the night. I don't know. I just feel like the WWE title at the moment isn't really something that I feel is being viewed as very prestigious. I just feel like it's sort of like a prop for not an awful lot right now. Really needs something a little bit different. And although it is a decent segment here to start off with because it showcases Drew very well and it gets Jimmy into this new attitude of just going down his own path and trying to carve his own route. I think that's great for him. I really, really do. So I think Jimmy probably came out of this one on top in terms of like just generally just bumping up his stock here in this particular opening segment. But then you just got Drew McIntyre being very consistent. I just feel like Cody really is just lost in the shuffle at the moment. And he's the WWE champion, so like he's doing something right, but at the same time, he's not doing anything right. It's a very weird situation. Maybe I'm just overthinking things, but the more I watch Cody every single week, like I even just see like less and less that's sort of drawing me to this whole situation on that side of things. I don't know, maybe I'm overthinking things, but I'd love to hear, a little bit more on, your reactions to this, I guess, in a minute, Nick. Not wanting to sort of dwell on that for too long, but going on to the first match of the night, like you said, the tag team matchup. I mean, interesting dynamic, this one. Putting Shinsuke and Rey Fenix together because of the recent interactions with the MFTs. I get it. It's understandable, I suppose. But then, just having them, lose out to the MFTs, it makes sense because you don't want these guys to lose momentum at the moment. I feel like there could be something to do with Survivor Series coming up for them. It's a possibility anyway. With their numbers game, it sort of makes sense in that regard. So, I mean, it is an interesting one. The tag team match was decent enough. I thought it was fine. I thought they all looked okay in the ring together, to be fair. And, the MFTs obviously pulling together to get that victory by hook or by crook, just goes with their gimmick at the moment. But yeah, I was surprised not to see really anything from the Wyatts as well. I thought there might have been a bit more with that sort of, ever developing situation there. But yeah, unfortunately not in this situation. The match between Tiffany and Kiana was great. I thought this was a really solid one-on-one matchup, and I think it's probably the coming out moment of Kiana James on the main roster, like you alluded to a moment ago as well. This was not an easy matchup for Tiff. It was very back and forth. It was very competitive. It was, it showcased both women to just to be gelling very well. I thought they had great chemistry together in the ring. So they put on a really good matchup. I thoroughly enjoyed it. And then yeah, the post match stuff when Julia was attacking Tiff and Jade Cargill comes down to help out. I thought, okay, right, well, we're going back to this again, this sort of like respect thing that Jade and Tiff have, but sort of like over the title. That, okay, it didn't it kind of worked before, but you could sense it wasn't quite right. But then with a heel turn from Jade Cargill, absolutely 100% necessary. Really glad they went down that route. I didn't like ultimately see it coming at first, but when they were sort of like celebrating in the ring and they were I don't know, they were consoling each other, sort of thing. It did seem like maybe it was about to happen, and I'm glad it did. It shows a different side of Cargill. I think someone of her current sort of gimmick and things, it wasn't really working out too well. So this is a great little test to see how she does, go into this heel type dynamic. And I think now we have a very, very viable threat for Tiffany's title very, very soon. And as what you said, that scar looks badass. So yeah, loving the new look. Whether it's obviously deliberate or not, obviously it's not, but it looks great on her. To be fair, I thoroughly like it. So make the most of it whilst you can, and we'll see how this heel run starts and eventually goes on. So yeah, decent first half for SmackDown. A lot to talk about for sure. And yeah, just want to get your a little bit more thoughts on how Cody really is vibing for you at the moment. Am I onto something, or am I just maybe a little bit too overcritical about it?
I think there's a few things going on with that situation. Obviously Cody's better, or excuse me, Drew is better on the mic than Cody. I don't think anyone can really argue that. But then you're also trying to put the Jimmy J stuff. You're trying to do that whilst on different shows. So I think that's part of it as well. But I feel like half the time, and maybe this is done by design, that Cody gets the mic, he's cut off almost instantly, almost every single time. And so, now that I say that out loud, it probably is by design because, Cody doesn't have really much other material. And even I, who, am a pretty big Cody fan in terms of in the ring, I had always wondered about how his story and how his kind of booking would go after he quote unquote finished the story. Although I did love the bit from Drew saying he needed to finish his story, and I do agree. He does. I would rather see that title on him right now than Cody. Cody, I think, honestly just needs a heel turn. And like I said, he's very good in the ring, but in terms of on the mic, he definitely is kind of lacking a story right now because he already finished his story. Um, but yeah, and other notes that there, yeah, love the Jade Cargill. Although you do have to feel a bit bad for Tiffany. Tiffany feels like she's very outnumbered. Not a ton of faces on SmackDown right now that seemingly will be able to help her. But that is the role you play as champion. So with that, we'll go ahead and move on to the second half of SmackDown, which was also pretty action packed as well. We first have Ilya Dragunov. Continuing that open challenge for the United States Championship. But before, we had a pretty cool segment backstage where we have Sammy kind of telling Ilya how important that title and that open challenge, how hard that open challenge can be. So essentially passing the torch, if you will, like John did to Sammy, a couple months ago. So I thought that was a pretty cool segment. Ilya just has, I don't know, something about Ilya, Sammy as well. They just have that kind of, you can't help but smile when you see them on TV. They just bring so much charisma to the screen, and so yeah, very much looking forward to. I love that I saw that reveal for the Open Challenge being continued. I think that's probably the best way to go about it for Ilya as well, who I don't think is terrible on the mic, but definitely isn't his strong suit. His strong suit is in the ring, and I think you can kind of show that here with another open challenge. So this open challenge does get answered by Aleister Black, once again going for that U.S. U.S. championship. KP, I got 4 commercial breaks during this match. I'm curious to see if you got the same. But regardless, with that being said, even with the 4 commercial breaks, this still was a terrific match. Stole the show for the night, obviously. Yeah, Ilya just has something special in the ring that just he just knows how to tell a story with his in-ring work, and I think that's very well shown here. Aleister Black isn't far behind him. Something about his style is just so unique. These two guys told the story, and I was here for it. I could definitely be okay with seeing that match a few more times. But yeah, the match goes pretty long too, even with those 4 commercial breaks, and is a ton of fun. The ending comes when we see the return of Damian Priest. I kind of thought it was maybe too soon for him to be back after taking that fireball to the face, but alas, here we are. Damian Priest tries to get revenge, but Zelina provides enough of a distraction, and then that allows Black to escape after Ilya does end up getting the win due to that slight distraction. So, yeah, interesting bit there. I've seen some rumblings online that this is Zelina Black dynamic kind of reminds them of another couple of talent that were just recently released. You could definitely make that case. I think it would have been cool to kind of see them all together. Of course, I'm talking about Karrion Kross and Scarlett, but I think it would have been cool to see that team together if they are so similar. But regardless, I thought this was a ton of fun and a good first notch for Ilya's title reign. Before we get into the main event, there were a couple of backstage interviews. The first one being of Carmelo Hayes, explaining why him and Miz are now even. He said that at one time he would have been someone to seek out revenge, but that no one really comes out on top of that scenario. And then he is interrupted by Kit Wilson and continuing more of his kind of weird character work that leads to a match between them next week. So we'll see where that goes. Another more significant interview shows Alexa Bliss and Charlotte being asked if they accepted the challenge from Bayley and Lyra on Monday Night Raw, and they do. But Nia also interrupts this interview and tells Charlotte to be careful, and because she's been stabbed in the back before, Alexa and Nia, this sets up a match for them next week as well. Getting into the main event, we have, of course, Jimmy Uso and Drew McIntyre in that no disqualification match. This was a quality contest, I thought, as well. Big Jim holds down his own, and Drew has the marks on his back to prove it, his back and his arm there. Some pretty brutal spots here. Drew does end up getting the win, but Jimmy did not make it easy. I was pretty surprised that Jay didn't come in to interfere in this one. But regardless, after the match, after getting the win, Drew goes to inflict more punishment on Jimmy, but is saved by security and Cody. Cody fends off Drew long enough to go check on Jimmy, but then gets a Claymore for his troubles to end this week's episode of Friday Night SmackDown. So, KP, thoughts on the first round of Ilya's Open Challenge U.S. Championship bout and the main event, as well as those interviews in between, if you have anything else to add to those.
Firstly, I can't vouch for how many ad breaks we got during that US Open Challenge. I don't honestly remember. There were at least 2 or 3 there as far as I can remember. But yeah, I didn't count for definite. But yeah, it is a bit of an issue, I suppose. A lot of action being missed, I guess you could say. But as far as the match goes, this was solid. This was a really good opener for Ilya Dragunov. And I think, you obviously mentioned it with the Sami Zayn interaction backstage. That I was just smiling, throughout that entire segment. These are, 2 of my favorite guys at the moment, Sami and Ilya. So for A, to see that match last week was incredible, and then B, to see that sort of like mutual respect being shown backstage and Sami just hyping up Ilya Dragunov, who just beat him the week before. I can't help but just enjoy it. It's just fantastic to me personally. But yeah, the match itself was great. I thought that him and Aleister Black put on a really compelling contest. Very, very back and forth. Just a bit. I think Ilya described it very well. He said at the very end of the little promo that he cut just before the match would begin. He said that pain will be entertainment, and I think that just really encapsulates everything to do with Ilya Dragunov. He is very much the kind of guy that will put his body on the line. He will do everything he can to make his opponent look great, but as well as also just showing just the scars of battle and just generally just putting everything out there to get these really good matches. And watching him through NXT, he did that time and time again. So really excited to see him on like a really good run now here on the main roster. With that US title, doing these open challenges, it's going to be great. I really am thoroughly excited for this. Just going from one good situation to another with Sami and Ilya, to be fair, as far as I'm concerned. But yeah, him and Black put on a good matchup, and this new sort of persona for Zelina Vega is very interesting. I really like the change in dynamic for her. I don't think as a wrestler she was really hitting the heights that I think that she has been known to be hitting, to be fair. I mean, we saw her as a manager a long time ago with Andrade, especially. During that, partnership between the two then, I thought she was incredible as a manager. So to see her in this position now, yes, she's not competing in the ring, and maybe she will do on occasion. I'm not going to rule that out. Obviously she probably will from time to time. but I do think she shines best as a manager. So seeing her in this situation again with someone that obviously she knows very, very well, and Aleister Black, I think the chemistry is just going to be off the charts here with these two. It's going to be tremendous. To see Damian Priest come back down again, and obviously continue that rivalry that these two have had for some time now. You thought maybe it might have been over after that last man standing match, but absolutely not. Priest wants more revenge, and we get to keep on going with this one. But Ilya retains via the distractions and everything like that, and then once all said and done, Damian looks to add insult to injury and try to put Black through the announce table, but does get away from the situation eventually, thanks to Zelina Vega. So, yeah, like I said, the dynamic, the two working together now is going to be great for Zelina and for Black. And just the match itself was great. Looking forward to seeing what's still to come with this US Open Challenge. I love them. I think, you probably do see some mixed opinions sometimes, but just generally speaking, I think the US title opportunities are great. They just give people a chance and allow things to develop in way of a championship match, which is never a bad thing. Going on to the main event, Drew McIntyre and Jimmy Uso, the no DQ match. This one was quite good. I thought this was a little bit chaotic and crazy, so that was obviously what you want to see. Certain weapons being used throughout the matchup, and just generally speaking, there was a lot going into this one. And you could see the animosity between Drew McIntyre and Jimmy Uso as well, which is just matching exactly what should be happening right now. Jimmy's obviously got a lot going on with Jey Uso, and there's mental stuff going on with those two. And maybe this is going to be a new look for Jimmy, just trying to sort of get into some bigger pictures for himself, which is quite nice. If you're literally having a match with the number one contender for the WWE Championship, you're doing something right. So I thought the match was decent enough. Bit of a fight, and that's what Jimmy wanted at the start of the night. He didn't want just a regular matchup. He wanted a fight, and he got it. And he also got a claymore to the face from Drew McIntyre. That was after Drew threw a chair at Jimmy's face. Would get the victory off that claymore. So it was a good contest with Cody coming out afterwards to try and help out Jimmy, and Drew McIntyre seemingly sort of outsmarts Cody. He knew that he'd go and check on Jimmy Uso, so he took advantage of that, hits a claymore kick and takes down Cody, ends the show with him sounding tall. It's good. It's what Drew should be doing. So obviously you feel bad for Jacob Fatu because if he didn't get injured, maybe Drew wouldn't be doing this right now. In fact, he probably wouldn't be. So you do feel bad for him in that situation, but the fact that Drew is back in the main event picture is exactly where he should be. So hopefully, fingers crossed, we do see Drew getting a bit more than just a main event picture and getting a little bit of a strap over his shoulder as a result of all of this. But we can talk about that a little bit closer to where we need to. SmackDown, though, as a whole, pretty good to be fair. I'm critical over little things here and there, and that's always going to be the case. We're just very passionate. That's how we do things here. But just generally speaking, the show was really fun. It had a lot going on. We saw both women's champions not in matches, but in the ring at one point tonight. That is an improvement. That's good. That's a step in the right direction. We had a US title opportunity. We had a tag match. The WWE champion was involved in situations. It seemed to showcase most of the important people, which is good. That's what we want in a show. Generally speaking, really fun show. Just had a lot going on. I gave it an 8 out of 10. I just thoroughly enjoyed it. It wasn't a SmackDown that I had to sort of just sit through and have to watch as a chore. But I was finding myself interested and hooked to see what was going on and just everything that was taking place. So no complaints from me. I quite liked it, to be fair. Nick, what did you make of this episode of SmackDown overall?
I thought it hit all the right notes that it needed to. And I feel like SmackDown in general just has been increasingly, gradually, sneakily getting better and better week by week. I gave this one an 8.5 out of 10. I love the Jade Cargill turn. And as you mentioned, everyone kind of being showcased. I don't know what they're going to do with Julia now because obviously, Kiana, I thought was kind of a bridge to get Julia and Stratton. But now with Jade there, I'm not really sure. Feels like I'm not really sure who else there is to challenge her. But anyways, like you said, being showcased is a step in the right direction. And of course, love the Ilya Open Challenge. I think where I'd like that to head is someone answers the Open Challenge but doesn't go well, and then that kind of tapers off into a feud. I'd love to see Gunther answer that. I think everyone is clamoring for the NXT diehards. The Gunther Ilya feud would feed families. Okay, I would love to see that, but we'll have to wait and see what happens. But with that, this has been the SmackDown recap, and if you like what we're putting out there, please let us know in the comments below. And don't forget to hit that like and subscribe button, as that helps us out tremendously. But with that, this has been the latest episode of The Push with Nick and KP. And until next time, we'll see you soon. Take care.